The world was poised on the precipice of its greatest conflict. It demanded sacrifice from many. For Brummett Echohawk, a Pawnee artist and soldier from Oklahoma, the call to arms resonated with an ancient echo. His family was steeped in military tradition. His grandfather, Howard Echohawk, was a famed Pawnee scout. They had long understood the warrior's path. Echohawk enlisted in the Oklahoma National Guard. In 1940, he saw himself not just as a soldier, but as a warrior artist. He was a modern-day chronicler. He would trade eagle feathers for a steel helmet. Buffalo hides would be exchanged for notebook paper. He would draw the raw truth of battle as he lived it. The Great Depression was a relentless foe in its own right. It also made a steady paycheck a necessity. His unit was the 45th Infantry Division. They were known as the Thunderbirds. It became one of the first National Guard divisions to be federalized. The unit gathered a unique tapestry of men. There were over 1,000 Native Americans among them. Cowboys and farmers also joined their ranks. All were bound for an unknown future. Their rigorous training included the pivotal Louisiana maneuvers in 1941. This forged a resilient, cohesive unit. General George S. Patton Jr. later praised them. He called them one of the best, if not actually the best, division in the history of American arms. Yet, even for men hardened by training and heritage, the eve of their first major amphibious assault brought pervasive dread. This was Operation Husky in Sicily. The 45th Division carried an immense weight. They were designated the first Allied troops to set foot on Nazi-held Europe. This mission underscored both their honor and the terrifying danger ahead. The inherent perils of amphibious landings were many. There was the unpredictable sea. There was the unseen enemy. There was the potential for logistical catastrophe. All of this created an almost unbearable psychological toll. HR was postponed due to rough seas. Soldiers huddled in their landing craft. They peered into the dark, churning water. Their cultural understanding of warfare and their place in the universe informed a deep, primal sense of impending fate. It was a feeling for many, like a canoe caught in a current that pulls us closer and closer to a thundering waterfall and sure death. The landing finally commenced on July 9, 1943. It was a baptism by chaos. The initial assault on Sicily was a disorienting mess. Landing craft was stranded on an unexpected reef. This scattered units and cost precious time. A disorienting Navy barrage was meant to soften enemy defenses. However, it further confused the landing forces. It nearly led to friendly fire incidents. Soldiers found themselves in an unforeseen Kaffir cornfield. They had anticipated cane. This was a critical flaw in pre-battle intelligence. It immediately bred a wry distrust among the men. Amidst this confusion, Sergeant Shield Chief, a Pawnee leader, emerged as a decisive force. He recognized the danger of indecision. He took command. He pushed his unit forward despite the lack of clear direction. His initiative led them to the enemy garrison at Point Zeffaglione. There, a swift surprise bayonet charge against the Italian defenders secured a crucial foothold. This immediate success was driven by adaptability and instinct rather than rigid plans. It underscored the unpredictable nature of combat. The immediate aftermath of the landing brought no respite. Only more intense, chaotic combat followed. It revealed stark truths about the battlefield's disorganization. Communication breakdowns were rampant. They were a constant source of frustration. Some soldiers, particularly Corporal Leading Fox, wryly likened this to the bureaucratic inefficiency of the bureaucratic inefficiency. An American Navy seaplane successfully bombed enemy positions, but this jubilation was brutally shattered. A German Messerschmitt swiftly downed the slow-moving biplane. It sent it spiraling into the sea. This replaced jubilation with a chilling sense of vulnerability. The protagonist, Echohawk, and his squad advanced. They faced a formidable, heavily camouflaged pillbox. In a harrowing infiltration, Echohawk crawled under the enemy's noses to throw a grenade. This led to the pillbox's destruction after intense ground combat. It was an act of individual bravery amidst the larger disarray. The chaos was further compounded by a near-friendly fire incident. It involved an American half-track. This highlighted the perilous lack of coordination between different branches of service in the heat of battle. The early stages of the Sicilian campaign were far from a perfectly orchestrated military operation. They were defined by confusion and unexpected challenges. The stark reality was that survival often depended on individual initiative. It also depended on the raw courage of men thrown into the maelstrom. The initial chaos of the Sicilian landing quickly gave way to a deeper, more brutal reality. The campaign transformed into a relentless grind of close-quarters combat. It was far removed from any romanticized ideal of warfare. Units found themselves constantly adapting. They were regrouping after harrowing encounters. One such encounter was the intense fire from an enemy pillbox. The integration of scattered American paratroopers into their ranks provided vital intelligence. It was sometimes disorienting intelligence about German movements, but it also laid bare the widespread disarray of Allied forces. The battlefield was a maelstrom of unpredictable engagements. Enemy fire often felt indiscriminate. The foe was rarely a singular, unified entity. Italian forces emerged unexpectedly amidst the German resistance. This added a volatile new layer to tactical engagements. It forced soldiers to confront a multifaceted enemy. Their allegiances and fighting styles shifted with the tide of battle. The relentless push north toward Comiso Airport became a crucible of continuous engagements. Each encounter added to the mounting casualty count. It also added to the psychological toll on the men. There were moments of tactical brilliance. Grant Shield Chief's decisive grenade attack on a machine gun nest was one. The swift charge that captured an Italian command post was another. These yielded prisoners and ground. Yet they also underscored the raw physical and emotional cost of every advance. The narrator, Ecke, felt the exhaustion in his aching foot. He felt the rapid pulse of fear in his chest. He felt the profound weariness in every muscle. Danger was immediate and constant. A motorcycle scout, spotted ahead, was swiftly eliminated. It was a stark reminder of the ever-present threat. Soon after, an ambush at stone houses marked a sharp escalation. It forced the unit to pull back and establish new positions on higher ground. This was a cycle of advance, engagement, and tactical retreat that defined their days. Yet, amidst the terror, the soldiers found resilience in their bonds and cultural practices. The haunting beauty of a Pawnee wolf call echoed through the Sicilian night. A shared joke about a powwow from home brought levity. The quiet concern for a wounded comrade anchored them. All these served as anchors against the dehumanizing churn of combat. They challenged any notion of soldiers as unfeeling automatons. As the campaign wore on, the 45th Division navigated a labyrinth of strategic challenges and intelligence ambiguities. High ground occupied facing Biscari became a defensive post. This was amidst reports of German paratroops. That threat ultimately proved unfounded. News of the capture of Comiso Airport offered a fleeting morale boost, but it was quickly followed by a fierce German counterattack and the elimination of a spy. This abruptly shifted the platoon's mission. It highlighted the fluid, often confusing nature of the front. The dialogue among the men implicitly critiqued the romanticized portrayals of Native American warfare in movies. It contrasted the gritty reality with Hollywood stereotypes. It also challenged the misconception that indigenous warriors avoided nocturnal combat. Meanwhile, persistent logistical and coordination issues continued to plague operations. The unexpected presence of British and Canadian vehicles in American sectors created vulnerable situations for small units. Encounters with newsmen also contributed to this. This underscored the fractured nature of Allied command. Yet, it was in these complex, uncertain conditions that the American Indian soldiers proved their unique and invaluable worth. Their traditional hunting and warfare techniques were highly effective. These included stealth, an innate sense of navigation, and an acute awareness of their surroundings. They allowed them to excel as scouts. They often outperformed non-Indian counterparts. Standard military training proved less effective in the nuanced art of reconnaissance. Encounters with Italian civilians like Roberto and Mario further revealed the intricate human landscape beyond the immediate front lines. These civilians navigated the war with their own survival strategies and complex allegiances. The Sicilian campaign ultimately culminated in hard-won strategic victories. This came at a heavy human cost. A dangerous reconnaissance mission investigated unidentified ships off the coast. It was initially feared to be a German amphibious landing. It ultimately proved a false alarm. Instead, it revealed floating mines and German control inland. This incident underscored the constant intelligence miscalculations that plagued the advance. The harsh, mountainous terrain and tenacious German resistance caused widespread heat exhaustion. This slowed the Allied advance. It necessitated costly maneuvers. Yet, the 157th Division's capture of strategic objectives marked decisive gains. These included Castel di Lucio and Bloody Ridge. This finally led to the much-anticipated relief of the weary 45th. General George S. Patton, Jr. recognized their extraordinary performance. He delivered a powerful speech to the division. He acknowledged their fighting prowess. He cemented their reputation as a formidable force. He called them one of the best, if not actually the best, division in the history of American arms. This commendation subtly debunked any lingering myths of Pawnee soldiers being merely country boys. It showcased their profound combat effectiveness. Despite the official surrender of Italy, Sergeant Shield Chief's pragmatic assessment proved prescient. He knew German resistance would continue. This challenged any naive notion of an easy advance. The grueling Sicilian campaign had forged the Thunderbirds into seasoned veterans. It now concluded. It set the stage for the even more challenging invasion of mainland Italy. This was a new and perilous phase of the war. The invasion of mainland Italy began with the brutal Salerno landing. This was Operation Avalanche. It was a plunge into a chaotic urban maelstrom for the 45th Division. An initial ill-fated division of troops occurred at a burning bridge. This was a strategic blunder that echoed Custer's fatal error. Custer had divided forces without knowledge of the enemy. The 1st Battalion, including B Company, found itself isolated. It was thrust deep into enemy territory. Dawn broke, shattering the brief, fitful sleep of men weary from 2 nights without rest. The Germans unleashed a devastating 88mm artillery barrage. The air filled with flying shrapnel. It ricocheted off buildings. It sheared tree branches. It showered the streets with rocks and glass. Soldiers were forced to hug Mother Earth, gasping with fear. They frantically dug into the pulverized earth. Urgent, almost panicked orders followed. C Company was under heavy attack at Persano. They faced panzers and infantry with little to no air or artillery support. B Company was immediately dispatched. They were tasked with taking Persano at all costs. This was a grim imperative. The Germans sought to use it as a springboard to the beach. The battle for Persano quickly devolved into a desperate struggle for survival. They faced overwhelming odds. The landscape was a macabre blend of beauty and horror. The fragrance of flowers from gardens mixed with pungent smells. There was cordite, burning rubber, gasoline. There was the horrifying odor of burning flesh. Soldiers pushed through gruesome scenes. They passed the body of a 2nd lieutenant blown apart. A tree was split by an 88mm shell. Bits of clothing and flesh clung to it. They saw C Company dead, run over by 40-ton tanks. Among them, Medic Benjamin Freeney and Dan Quickbear, an Indian soldier, lay dead. Quickbear's hair was still burning. His mouth was open to the indifferent sunlight. This was the reality of the front. It was far removed from any clean surgical military operation. The discovery of a hidden radio transmitter underscored the insidious complexity of the fight. The capture of an old woman and her father in a civilian building also showed this. The line between civilian and combatant blurred. Some soldiers, enraged by the suspected intelligence leak, called to kill her. Nobody will know. But Sergeant Grant Shield Chief, ever the pragmatist, insisted, let battalion handle this. Persano became a meat grinder. It was repeatedly assaulted and retaken. Each advance was met by the brutal effectiveness of German armor and artillery against exposed infantry. German infiltration and flanking maneuvers were constant. They led to heavy casualties. They created the perpetual threat of being surrounded. The unearthly cry of a shell-shocked peacock pierced the cacophony. It was trapped in a bird sanctuary amidst the hotel fighting. It was a surreal symbol of the war's unnatural disruption. Optimistic reports from generals like Mark Clark were a cruel joke to the men. Clark claimed conditions satisfactory and morale high, but the men felt run over by a herd of buffalo. The true story was one of improvised defenses. Soldiers created loaded socks filled with TNT and grenades as anti-tank weapons. It was a desperate, primal defiance. A blonde-headed German officer arrogantly declared, "We Germans will soon capture the American beach. You haven't a chance." Last arrow, a Potawatomi shot back, "But you won't be alive in a short while," he continued. "Of course you know of the Geneva Convention." "Well, the Geneva Convention doesn't mean anything to us. We are American Indians." San Antone, a Comanche, then dramatically took down the officer. Leading Fox comically yelled, "No scalp, no scalp, It was a moment of dark humor and fierce pride amidst the despair. It was a direct challenge to the enemy's perceived superiority. Officers from Corps headquarters arrived to confirm the impending threat of being overrun in the morning. Sergeant Shield Chief, embodying the ancient warrior spirit, performed a prayer pipe ritual. He invoked the Pawnee legend of Chattic Sittick's men of men. He stoically stated, "We will see what morning brings." The raw, unvarnished reality of battle was further exposed. A Pathy news crew and a Navy officer arrived to document the progress. Their cameras were forgotten. This revealed the stark disconnect between frontline reality and public perception. The Salerno beachhead became a crucible of psychological and physical endurance. Relentless German air raids, infantry charges, and panzer assaults created critical defensive challenges. They pushed soldiers to their absolute limits. Days without sleep and constant shelling frayed nerves. This led to near breakdowns. The deceptive peace of a flowing river at dawn, with no birdsong, was swiftly shattered. Fast-firing German machine guns were whirling like a riveting machine. They sent men diving for slit trenches as bullets raised cotton balls of dust. The river itself, a grim witness, carried German dead downstream. Moments of friendly fire compounded the confusion and terror. An American tank destroyer mistakenly fired 50-caliber slugs into Ecky's squad. Relief, however fleeting, came with the arrival of Beaufighters. They were equipped with radar. They hunted German night bombers in the dark. One dramatically fell from the sky in flames. This signaled a shift in air superiority. In a crucial defensive stand, a panzer assault was halted. It was stopped, not by grand strategy, but by concentrated American firepower. It was fueled by individual bravery. Ecky, the narrator, vividly recalled falling asleep sitting up. He dreamed of a peaceful funeral in Pawnee, Oklahoma. He awoke stiff and dry-mouthed in his slit trench. It was his casket. He was covered by a mosquito net. The powder on his face was merely dust from the previous night's heavy Navy barrage. The Hupiri cuckoo, the morning star above the Italian mountains, reflected like a signal mirror. It was a beautiful, hopeful sight amidst the grim reality. The 157th Regimental Combat Team on the left flank was hit hard by a German barrage. An American counter-barrage then shielded them. In a pivotal moment, Private Seeley, a replacement soldier, poked his bugle above his slit trench. He sounded a stuttering but spirited charge. It was a defiant call that helped break the German wolf pack, closing in for the kill. Soldier morale, though battered, found resilience in the candid assessment of their leaders. General Troy Middleton, their division commander, and General Raymond S. McLean, the artillery commander, were widely praised. McLean was lauded for personally driving a truckload of shells under fire to an embattled unit. This was a stark contrast to other generals who remained distant from the inferno. The strategic decision to launch Operation Shingle at Anzio was driven by Winston Churchill. It was intended to break the brutal stalemate of the Gustav Line. But American logistical concerns existed. General Lucas's vehemently overruled protest regarding a rushed timeline was ignored. The January 22, 1944, landing proceeded with little time for rehearsal. Lucas was deeply worried. He knew a quick link-up with the main Fifth Army was impossible. This sealed the fate of the Anzio beachhead as a trap. Churchill hoped to hurl a wildcat on the shore. He would later lament that all we had got was a stranded whale. It was trapped in an abscess on the Italian coast. Hitler, furious, ordered Field Marshal Kesselring to lance the abscess. This galvanized German efforts into sustained, brutal counterattacks. Anzio quickly devolved into a bloody stalemate. It was an inferno that devoured Allied resources and lives. The psychological toll was immense. Soldiers, splattered with mud and panting like winded prairie wolves, described the terrifying, loud, ear-splitting explosions and concussions of German 88s and mortar barrages. They acknowledged, "No brave men here, only desperate men, hugging Mother Earth." The Lance the Abscess offensive raged. It transformed the battlefield into a campo di carne, the field of flesh. It was a gutted earth where artillery flashed and rumbled like a summer electrical storm. Eerie flare shadows danced. The distinct, express train-like sound of the Anzio Express, the German KS-5 railway gun, added to the terror. Amidst the heating ovens of hell, Ecke recalled helping a wounded soldier. He then saw the medic shot. He narrowly escaped into an icy culvert. He was numb with cold as water rippled with each convulsion. Life on the beachhead was characterized by the Anzio gait. Men walked in a crouch, shoulders hunched. They were ready to duck incoming shells. The Thunderbird division, later known as the Rock of Anzio, found solace even in the mundane. The narrator, despite his wounds, found encouragement from British Red Cross worker Madeleine Carroll. She provided him with paper to draw. It was a small act of humanity amidst the relentless, attritional nature of a campaign. Far from a straightforward advance, it had become a brutal, protracted struggle for survival. Anzio was less a battle, more a slow, grinding consumption of flesh and spirit. The German High Command was galvanized by Hitler's furious order. They committed 125,000 troops. They launched counterattacks with a brutal ferocity. This threatened to push the Allies into the sea. February 16, 1944, saw the largest artillery barrage yet. 432 American guns fired a deafening counter-barrage. It shook the very earth. This was followed by an assault from the elite Berlin Spandau Lehr regiment. It was a unit initially thrown back in disgrace, but its relentless pressure never truly abated. The next day, massive Allied airstrikes occurred. They dropped 1,100 tons of bombs. Sustained artillery fire tried to stem the tide. Yet, by February 18th, the Germans had hammered a gap into the Allied line. It was 2.5 miles wide and 1 mile deep. They pushed relentlessly towards the flyover, the final protective barrier. Chaos ensued. Germans in long overcoats swarmed forward. This forced the mobilization of rear echelon troops. Cooks, clerks, and mechanics were thrown into the desperate, chaotic fight amidst heavy rain. This Lance the Abscess offensive was terrifying, but it ultimately proved a grass fire. It never became the forest fire the Allies feared. It failed to drive them from the beachhead. Still, the attritional cost was staggering. The names of places like Caraceto and the factory became etched in the memories of the 45th Division. They were synonymous with brutal back-and-forth struggles for mere yards of ground. The catastrophic loss of the Rangers at Cisterna cast a long, dark shadow over the beachhead. Only 6 out of 767 men returned. This devastated Allied morale. It reinforced the grim German hold. There was no myth of invincibility here, only the palpable fear, the bone-deep exhaustion, and the desperation of men pushed to their absolute limits remained. This was true even in their moments of greatest bravery. Yet, through this immense suffering and the strategic blunders that had created the trap, the resilience of the Thunderbird division shone through. They were the Rock of Anzio. They were a highly respected infantry unit. Their steadfastness under fire became legendary. The constant psychological toll of prolonged, brutal combat led to moments of profound disillusionment. Even the narrator, Ecke, briefly went AWOL. He found a temporary escape in Naples. But his eventual return, secured by an Oklahoma general, underscored a deep, unshakable commitment to his unit. It was a testament to bonds forged in the crucible of shared trauma. The strategic consequences of Anzio were clear. General Lucas, blamed for the stalemate, was relieved of command. He was replaced by the more aggressive General Lucien Truscott. This signaled a much-needed shift in command strategy. On May 23, 1944, the Allied breakout finally came. It marked the end of the harrowing stalemate. It paved the way for the liberation of Rome. 2 days later, the Thunderbirds were the first Allied troops to reach the Eternal City. It was a costly victory. They proudly entered the Vatican on June 4, 1944. They then continued their advance in Italy. Anzio also became a testament to individual valor. The campaign saw an extraordinary 22 Congressional Medals of Honor awarded. These included Cherokee Lieutenant Jack Montgomery at Padiglione and Muskogee Creek Lieutenant Ernest Childers at Olivito. Philip Shield Chief Govan, a Pawnee platoon sergeant, was wounded but returned home. However, his brother, Grant Govan, would tragically be killed later in southern France. It was a loss that for some fulfilled a Pawnee legend. Floyd Good Buffalo Rice, another Pawnee warrior, was among the survivors. But for Brummitt Echohawk, the war's profound impact extended far beyond the battlefield. His experiences, and those of his fellow Native American warriors, profoundly informed his post-war life. This led to a powerful legacy of cultural preservation and artistic expression. The war, for many, was not just about combat. It was about the erosion of their communities. It was about the enduring importance of their cultural heritage. Even amidst the chaos of late 1943, a photograph captured Echohawk sketching. It was a visual testament to his unique role as a warrior artist. He documented the war in real time. This spirit, honed by battle, drove him in his later years. He dedicated his post-war life to documenting his experiences. He also documented those of his comrades through writing and art. It was a critical act of preservation. He suffered a debilitating stroke in the early 1990s. Despite this, he painstakingly struggled to describe what he had witnessed. He also described the friends he had lost. He preserved their stories through vivid detail and imagery from his memory and his combat sketches. He became a dedicated preserver of traditional Pawnee culture. He became a nationally recognized Native American artist. He constantly drew on his tribal heritage for inspiration. His powerful mural aboard the USS Anzio stands as a monument to the beachhead defenders and his fellow Thunderbirds. Echohawk's multifaceted legacy was recognized nationally. It underscored the diverse contributions of wartime heroes. When people met Brummitt Echohawk, they saw the flapping of the Thunderbird's wings and the flashing of its eyes. They stood before an honored warrior. He, in the traditions of old, proved himself. His efforts culminated in the posthumous awarding of a Congressional Gold Medal. This symbolized national recognition for his contributions. He was recognized both as a serviceman and a cultural preserver. His story challenges any narrow view of wartime heroes. It emphasizes the profound impact individuals can have through civilian contributions. This is particularly true in cultural preservation and artistic endeavors. It stands as a powerful counter to any perception of Native Americans as solely historical figures. It firmly affirms their impactful role in modern warfare and beyond.